Good morning, church family. So we're going to take a step away from our epic series, and we're going to do a message over Proverbs 31. So I'd like to say Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers in the room. And I just want to paint this lens. So usually when you hear like a message over Proverbs 31, it can be, these super high expectations and things that women think they can't achieve, right? But I want to just paint this lens. So view this message today through the lens of Proverbs 31 is a search list for the man, the young man, and it's a checklist for the young woman, all right? Take that in consideration. So I was once told that behind every successful man is a somewhat surprised mother-in-law. That might be true, right? But I would say behind every God-fearing man should not be a surprised wife, right? Should be a supportive wife. And a wife that speaks life into her husband. So I want to invite you to open up your Bibles to Proverbs chapter 31 this morning. And the book of Proverbs is focused on providing wisdom to all, but mostly is directed towards the young man. And listen, so throughout this whole book, after all the insight and wisdom and advice provided to a young man, the end of this book focuses on providing the qualities of character and the most important person in that man's life. And that is the woman that he will marry. The woman that he will marry. Now, young man, I want to make this statement that if you are thinking about getting married and you're thinking of a wife, the most important thing to consider is getting married and staying married should be the most important thing on your mind. Getting married and staying married should be the most important thing on your mind when you're thinking of the qualities of a wife. I believe the Bible proves this in one way of staying on the path of the righteous in Proverbs chapter 4, verse 18. So with all that to consider, let's read chapter 31 together, starting at verse 10. An excellent wife, who can find? She is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm. All the days of her life, she seeks wool and flax and works with willing hands. She is like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from afar. She rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household and portions for her maidens. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands, she plants a vineyard. She dresses herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night. She puts her hands to the distaff, and her hands hold the spindle. She opens her hand to the poor and reaches out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household are clothed in scarlet. She makes bed coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them. She delivers sashes to the merchant. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, let her works praise her in the gates. So this context of this Proverbs 31 woman, I want us to think of like a gritty, respectable, upper middle class woman in her 40s and 50s. Right? That's the picture I want you to see. Someone you respect because they have everything together, and yet is also relatable and down to earth. She is the ideal role model, which is why Solomon highlights her. But I imagine that for many of us in this room, looking at the ideal role model can be a painful thing because it shines light. It shines light on our less than ideal circumstances. So I'd like to begin this teaching with 3 qualifications. So this first one is trust God with your failures. Maybe you're divorced. Maybe you look at this picture and it hurts to think about how your marriage failed. Or maybe you're an empty nester. You made a lot of mistakes as a parent, and you grieve over the thought of being a failed parent. Or maybe you're a young mother and you feel inadequate as a mother and a wife, and you look at this Proverbs 31 woman and you think, I could never be this. Regardless, I want to encourage you to rest in the grace of God. If you are grieving over your past failures, know that God's grace is sufficient to forgive. He doesn't want you to live in the past. He wants you to leave your past right where it is. That's under his grace. I think it's very easy for us modern day Christians to just get focused on this thought that, yeah, God forgives me for my sins. And then we forget that he cares about all the other things in our lives. He doesn't just forgive you for your past sins, your present sins, the sins you will commit. He also cares about what you do, how you will move forward in your walk with him, right? How you will witness to the world. So just know that God cares about every single decision that you make. And if you're overwhelmed by these past failures, know that God's grace is sufficient to do the right thing today. So don't be intimidated by this picture, please. Instead, look to God for grace and try to obey him with what he's telling you today. The second qualification is trust God with the failures of others. Now, everybody needs to take a deep breath because this is not something we do easily, right? We do not do this easy. Trusting God with the failures of others in our lives. Another temptation that we might have when studying this passage or listening to a sermon like this is to be critical of the failures of others. Maybe this section is like scratching an old wound or an old scar. And it could be regarding how your mother failed you. She didn't live up to the standards that you thought you had or that she should have had. It's a painful reminder. Or maybe you struggle with your spouse. And this passage reminds you of his or her failures. In either case, stay anchored in the fact that there is a sovereign, wise God that gave you your parents and gave you your spouse with all of their imperfections. All of them. And just maybe, listen, just maybe, he is doing something precious through your imperfect situation that is far more valuable than immediate comfort. Just 2 weeks ago, I read a quote from David Mathis, and here's just a piece of it. There's a greater goal and deeper joy than our comfort in the moment. And listen, gentlemen, if this text exposes faults in your spouse, listen to me. Do not sit there and gripe about it. Don't sit there and gripe about it. Rather, consider what you can do to help her be more of what God has made her to be. And then make sure you are quick to notice where she excels rather than where she struggles. Our third qualification is trust God with your singleness or your childlessness. So maybe you are reading this and this is painful because you long for marriage or you long for children. But God in his providence hasn't given them to you yet. That can be very hard, but again, I tell you, trust in the sovereign wisdom of God. His will is good. So hear me out on this. Find a joy in God that a spouse and a child just cannot provide. Find a joy in the Lord that neither a spouse or neither a child can provide. Now with this foundation, we're talking about these qualifications. Let's talk about the character of an excellent woman. The character of an excellent woman. So let's look at the word in verse 10. An excellent wife who can find. An excellent wife. So the Hebrew term in verse 10 is not mainly about virtue. Hear me out. The Hebrew word, hayil, I believe I pronounced that right, typically describes the strength and power of a valiant warrior. So this is the same Hebrew word used in Habakkuk chapter 3, verse 19, or Habakkuk, however you want to say that. When describing the Lord, verse 19, he says, God, the Lord, is my strength. Is my strength. The same word used for strength here is used for excellent in Proverbs 31, verse 10. Therefore, God is not merely highlighting this woman's morality, friends. He is highlighting her complete excellence. So with that being said, I'm going to give us 5 attributes of this woman's character. We're going to go verse by verse. So as I read these and I mention a verse, just read it. It's worth emphasizing that this chapter confronts false narratives about the biblical womanhood, about what it looks like, what it should be. So here's some examples. Some think that biblical womanhood means barefoot and pregnant. Although many of us probably have wives that do those things, that's not what the Bible tells us exactly what to do. Or it is, the woman rarely leaves the house, and all she has to do is just have kids and nothing else. Or promotes abusive relationships, domineering husbands whose wives are, and I apologize for these words, like ditzy trophy wives. That is not what we see from the biblical narrative, right? Those are false. Or others would just say that the biblical narrative says that the wife just has to be a glorified housemaid. But Proverbs 31 praises a highly industrious, ambitious woman. She is tough, friends, hardworking and successful. In particular, she has a physically demanding, profitable business making clothing. So verse 13 says she goes out to gather wool and flax. And processing flax into usable fabric was a demanding and long process. But she doesn't mind. Instead, she works long days doing the necessary work. Verse 15 says she gets to work while it is yet night. So it's either at night, right, or early in the morning. And verse 18 says her lamp does not go out by night. And gentlemen, this woman is tough, right? This woman is tough. So in fact, notice how verse 17 says this. She dresses herself with strength and makes her arms strong. Makes her arms strong. Her hard work has made her physically fit and strong. Do you hear that? So now I want to say this. God is not saying that everyone has to look like Madison Duff to be the excellent wife. That is not what the Bible's saying. Everyone has different gifts given to them by God for different people and those things. But notice that all of her work serves her family. Serves her family. In verse 24, she makes linen garments and sells them. She delivers sashes to the merchant. Okay? A high-quality garment was worth value, so her hard work is very profitable. And as a result, verse 14 says she is able to provide her family with foreign delicacies. Foreign delicacies. It's either really exotic foods or exotic things that you can't get around, the local area. And verse 22 says she is able to dress herself in fine clothing. So to collect our thoughts here, she is not a ditzy, lazy trophy wife who sits around, scrolls social media all day. She is ambitious. She's a hardworking woman. So ladies, evaluate your ideal routine. Make sure you are not missing what God has made you to be. Now, verse 27 says, she does not eat the bread of idleness. God made us to be productive. So ladies, again, I say ambitiously serve your family. And if God has blessed you where you don't need to make money, be ambitious at pursuing other opportunities to minister to your family. Redeem that time for the glory of God and the good of others. Her second attribute is she is wise. She is wise. It's fascinating how this woman just embodies wisdom, embodies the whole wisdom of Proverbs that it encourages over and over again throughout this whole book. So for example, she plans ahead, verse 21. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household are clothed in scarlet. So in the northern parts of Israel where there's mountains, high elevations, it snows. This woman's not worried. She's prepared, right? She plans ahead. And of course, she demonstrates significant business sense through her profitable clothing business. I want us to notice what she does with this profit in verse 16. Verse 16 says, she considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands, she plants a vineyard. This is a significant venture. Now, I'm making assumptions on this text, but hear me out. She bargains for the field. She clears it of brush and stone. She plants the vines, builds the trellis, and then builds a wine press. Is that impressive? It is, right? And God is not saying that every Christian woman needs to buy a vineyard and build a wine press. That's not what he's saying. This is simple illustration of one woman being ambitious and using the gifts that God gave her to the fullest. And she's pursuing them. And notice how the community acknowledges her wisdom in verse 26. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. So based on years of living, she has earned the right. She has earned the right to instruct others. Now, I think we all know the type, and this may sound rude, but hear me out. I think we all know the type that, when some people just speak, we don't listen. They haven't earned our ear. And we need to check our hearts with that, but I'm speaking on our human flaws. We need to check our hearts on that. But this woman here, everything she says is humble and insightful and wise. This woman is a joy to listen to her think. So ladies, pursue wisdom. I especially want to emphasize this point for the younger ladies in the room. Our culture, listen to me, young ladies, our culture tells you to grab the world's attention with how you shape and present your body, with how you dress, with how you talk. But Proverbs chapter 11, verse 22, it states this: as a ring of gold in a swine's snout, so is a lovely woman who lacks discretion. I have pigs in my backyard, and I promise a snout is not anything pleasant. They're stinky and dirty and gross. So young girls, young ladies, unmarried ladies, make yourselves attractive by being confident in who God made you to be. Modesty does not mean hiding from the world. It doesn't. But above all, strive to make your most outstanding quality your character. Your character. You are wise, discerning, godly, and compassionate. Remember that. Now, men, make sure you value what God values. It's that simple. To the single men, you can't just ignore physical looks. I get that. Proverbs chapter 5 says we should be attractive to her. We should be attracted to her. But remember, the lack of discretion is like a ring of gold and a smelly, dirty pig snout, and that ring will lead you astray. Now, married men, your wife may not be in the prime of her physical beauty anymore, but do not let your eyes covet a younger woman, whether that's on TV, whether that's at work, or wherever. That's your self-discipline, right? Appreciate the inner beauty of experience, and love your wife for all God has done for her. This third attribute is she is family first. She is family first. Notice that this woman is very ambitious, right? This is not a selfish ambition, though. All of her labor and planning is focused on her children and her husband. And this comes from the text, verse 15. She rises while it is yet night, provides food for her household, and portions for her maidens. Verse 21. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household are clothed in scarlet. In verse 27. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. So, of course, this is where our culture gets antsy about what real biblical womanhood is, right? It says that the biblical structures oppresses women and that they need to free themselves from these structures to express themselves in these natural ways, whatever way is natural. Sometimes that's through a career. Sometimes that's through how you dress. It's always they need to do what's best for them, not their family. That's the culture we have. But this philosophy, listen, this may be hard to hear. I think this philosophy is narcissism. It's self-absorption. And God constantly condemns that spirit in both men and women. And let me explain. A married man should not consider pursuing his career over everything else and just set his family to the side, to pursue his own dreams. The Bible calls all of us to find our joy in something bigger than ourselves. It teaches us to find our joy in selfless, humble service within biblical structures. Now, I'm reading this book. It's called Managing Your Household Well. It's by Chap Bettis. And the whole idea of this book is simply to lead your household well. That sets you up for church leadership. Because if you can't lead your household well, you shouldn't be leading others, right? And it's this whole understanding that men have to really own up to this idea of being the spiritual leaders of the home. We have to do that. And this begins in the home for both husband and wife. It's not just a one-sided thing. If you're in a covenant marriage, you have to work together. And then this extends to the church and the community. God made us to thrive in these structures. And when we follow God's design, everyone benefits. Everyone does. There's no question that our culture is getting sicker and sicker as we get further away from biblical truth. Am I right? We have children that are suffering in broken homes. We've got adults that are depressed and angry, and they run to the world to fix their problems. So listen, selfless service brings far more lasting joy than self-expression or worldly passions ever will. Don't buy the world's lies, friends. Both men and women, build your life around family, trusting the Lord that He knows better than we ever will, and that His will is always wise and good. Always wise and good. So this fourth attribute is she is generous to all. Verse 20. She is generous to all. She opens her hand to the poor and reaches out her hands to the needy. So she's not just providing for her family. Her compassion extends to everyone around her. This is a reminder that a godly home, listen, this is a reminder that a godly home is not a fort intended to close out the world. Instead, this should be a hospital, especially for your own family, but anyone else. Welcome them into your home, into your hospital. This fifth attribute, she is godly. She is godly. Verse 30. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. This verse is the foundation of her character. I say this because Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7 states the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Proverbs chapter 9, verse 10 states the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. So in other words, a right view of God is the foundation for a right view of life. Write that down or remember it. And it drives godly, selfless, generous living. A right view of God is the foundation for a right view of life. Ladies, the greatest gift you can give your husband, it's not physical beauty, a clean house, or a meal on the table every night. The greatest gift you can give your husband is a godly heart that fears the Lord. Amen. A godly heart that fears the Lord. Yes. And the greatest gift you can give your children is not the greatest education. It's not the greatest structure. It's not the most extracurricular activities. The greatest gift you can give your children is a godly heart. So no matter how much pressure you feel to be excellent in everything, never compromise the pursuit of godliness. But when it comes to influence, I'll just say this. You know, husbands, we provide for our families and our children look up to us. If you're a grandfather, your grandchildren look up to you. But the woman in the home always has more influence. Always has more influence. My wife will speak life into me in front of my boys. And when I come home, it's like, there's my daddy. And then I just get to act and love and be with them. But she speaks life into my children that influences their thoughts and how they view their father. And it's true. Mothers, wives, you have more influence than you can imagine. So men, make sure you put your wife in a position to thrive spiritually. Because if she is struggling spiritually, at some point, that building is going to collapse. And as the leader of your household, that's going to be on you. Guard her walk, man. Guard your wife's walk. Men, we've been designed by God to be the head of the home, the head of the family. And that means to provide and to protect. Physically protect and spiritually. Spiritually protect. So we can't just bring home the money. We can't just leave the spiritual leading to our wives. We must lead this charge in the front, doing it together with our spouse. So in the light of all this excellent character of this excellent woman, let's talk about the value of a godly woman. The text begins and ends by emphasizing this woman's incredible value. So notice in verse 10, she is rare, an excellent wife who can find. She is more precious than jewels. So verse 10 begins with a rhetorical question. Why? What's a rhetorical question forcing us to do? It's forcing us to think, right? It's an attempt. Listen to this. Young men, listen to me. This is an attempt to arouse a desire in young men to find such a woman as this. To find such a woman as this. We truly need to emphasize this right here because young men, when you're young, all you dream about is finding the most gorgeous woman. But Solomon urges his desire to be for a strong character. A strong character. That's what he goes on to describe in the rest of chapter 31. And then he drives this home. At the end of verse 10, the last word can be translated in many ways, but my ESV is translated to jewels. Others say rubies and pearls. But regardless, the term speaks of something precious, rare, extremely valuable. So ladies, you might be lacking in a lot of standards that our culture likes to put on you and hold you up to. You may not think you're beautiful. You may not think you're smart. You may not have great talents or an impressive career. But if you are hardworking and wise, and if you serve those who love you, if you strive after godliness, you are precious. And if you aren't any of those things, remember, it's within your reach. It is within your reach by the grace of God. So don't let the world shape your view of yourself or of those around you. Strive to be what God values because it is extremely precious. And men, if you have a wife like this, you better give thanks to God and thanks to her. We must do that. Proverbs chapter 12 encourages us to be disciplined. This is for both men and women. So just listen to me read this. Whoever loves a discipline loves knowledge, but he who hates reproof, I didn't make this up, is stupid. That's in the text. A good man obtains favor from the Lord, but a man of evil devices he condemns. No one is established by wickedness, but the root of the righteous will never be moved. An excellent wife is the crown of her husband. The crown of her husband. It's so easy to be critical, and it's easy to let the world shape our views and expectations. It's easy to fixate on the negative qualities of our spouse. But listen, if we're called to a covenant marriage, we must reflect the same grace that God extends to us. The Lord does not constantly just beat us down by focusing on our failures. Instead, he extends grace and builds us up. So husbands and wives, let's do the same. Be intentional. Speak life into the good qualities that you see in your spouse. Build them up and don't tear them down. And if you're a single man, dream of a godly woman. Dream of this example. Because she will do you far more good than beauty ever will. So verse 10 starts by emphasizing that this woman is rare, and then it ends by emphasizing that she is praiseworthy in verse 30 and 31. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gates. We could talk a long time about the first line of verse 30, but I just want to say there's nothing wrong with charm or beauty. Praise the Lord for women that are charismatic and have these quick-witted personalities. They're fun to be around. Praise the Lord for that. And beauty is also a wonderful gift. The Bible teaches that husbands and wives should find each other attractive and enjoy the physical relationship that comes with that. That's what this teaches. But God also warns that both of them have limited value. Someone can have a charming personality that makes a great first impression, but a beautiful smile doesn't always get you through the tough things in life. Therefore, both men and women must keep a long-term perspective on what really matters. So ladies, I'm going to ask you the hard questions now. Do you spend more time cultivating your wardrobe or your appearance or cultivating your heart? Men, do you spend more time complaining about your family or spiritually leading your family? And I'm not attacking the men in the room. I don't want this to feel like an attack. Mostly I'm preaching to myself, right? But I think it's very important that we evaluate ourselves and consider all of this character and wisdom given to us about the excellent woman if you're a husband. And again, verse 30 says that the excellent wife deserves to be praised. So men, we must not be quiet about our wife's excellence. Verse 31 paints a picture of public praise at the city gates. Public praise. The excellent wife deserves public-wide honor for her incredible character and her incredible service. What does that look like? So husbands, let your wife know how much you appreciate her. And listen, you may not be the romantic type. You know, your praise may come across as a goofy high school boy, but it doesn't matter. If it comes from the heart, she will be thankful. Praise your wife at every opportunity. And if you have a godly mother, praise her for her excellence as well. Thank her for all she does. So ladies, here's your application. It's real simple. Write this down. Be what God made you to be. Be what the Lord made you to be. And ladies, especially young ladies, The world puts so much pressure on you to fit its mold. You got to be promiscuous. You have to be loud. You have to have a big career. But that will never satisfy you. That is a bunch of broken lies. But instead, instead trust the Lord that he knows what's good for you and find joy in pursuing his plan for you. So I ask you all to do this. Everyone take this into consideration. Support each other in being what God has made you to be. That's it. As a church body, support each other in being what God has made you to be. A huge temptation on a sermon like this is to notice where everyone falls short. Where everyone falls short, your spouse, your mother, your father. And it can be hard to live with the faults of others, the failures of others. I know that some of you have endured terrible grief at the hands of a spouse or a mother or a father. I understand that. But I want to urge you to not hold a grudge and first embrace God's goodwill for your life. And then second, this may be hard to hear, but pray for them. Don't crucify them. Pray for them. So give praise to and for the excellent woman. And men, don't be bashful. Praise your wife. If you're sitting here and you're thinking, well, I have nothing to be thankful for, nothing to praise, try to be less critical and praise your wife anyway. Try to be less critical. The same goes for your mom. Being a mom is hard work. Your mom has faults, but she has probably invested more time and effort into your life than you can ever imagine. So praise